What's going on, GOAT Format Duelists? ACP's back here. No, I haven't been quite as active with the GOAT Format content as some of you guys would like, but I felt like I had to make this video just because this deck has been winning so much that it would be like criminal not to share it with you guys. I know the Angel Chaos deck profile that I posted, many years back was very popular. That deck's won a lot, got third and second in 2 GOAT Format championships. Third and third again in 2 GOAT Format championships. And this deck, in many ways, I use sort of the same deck building process and philosophy, but in many ways, I think this is sort of like a new age kind of Angel Chaos deck, even though obviously there's no Shining Angels in it, but I'll get into why they're similar later. So you'll see here, this is obviously not Angel Chaos, it's Thunder Dragon Chaos, but there's a lot of unusual choices that I think make it better than most of these sort of unoriginal stock Thunder Dragon Chaos lists that have been popular on the DuelingBook ladder lately. I think this is definitely a much better meta call, no pun intended, and I think it's just more solid, it's lower variance, it has a lot more power plays, and I think it's just got way better matchups than pretty much any other Chaos deck that people are playing right now. And this deck, believe it or not, I've had 3 people in my testing group use it. I've used it in a few games myself. I'm 5-0 with it in DuelingBook Ladder Ranked, but the testing group as a whole is 36-2. Yeah, so 36 wins, 2 losses in DuelingBook Ladder. So that's like a 95% win rate almost. And like the 2 losses, in my opinion, like at least one of those losses, it was like the person punted, because not everyone in my testing group is like necessarily as good as I am. So like, if people that are like worse than me can win like 95% of the time with the deck, like imagine how sick it must be. So I'm gonna talk about like some of the choices and the reasons why it's different than a lot of other Thunder Dragon Chaos decks. So the first thing you'll notice is no Night Assailants, and it actually took me a while to get to this point, just because like Night Assailant feels like a card that like every Thunder Dragon Chaos deck should have, even if you have meta, because like it's so synergistic, it does like multiple things. The problem with the card is actually twofold. One, like Night Assailant, it feels like deceptively good against aggro. You go like, oh, it flips up, it kills a monster, must be good against aggro decks, right? It's monster removal. That's actually not the case. Against like most aggro decks right now, Night Assailant is like not that great because like half the time they're attacking, it's with a Blade Knight, which is like just really awkward. So like a lot of their attackers, like Night Assailant doesn't even stop. Like, if you look at the Mensch's deck, for example, like, that deck plays 3 Blade Knights and 2 Reinforcements of the army. And, like, anytime you set a monster, they're just gonna Blade Knight and attack it. Or, like, Nobleman Across at it. So, like, it's just not that great to set. And, like, yeah, the discard part of the effect is good, but the other good thing about not playing Night Assailant is that you'll notice here there's also no card destruction. So we don't have to play that either. And the reason why that's a good thing is because Thunder Dragon Chaos is the most popular deck right now, like by far on ladder, probably in GOATFormat.com tournaments as well. And card destruction is just really bad in the Thunder Dragon Chaos mirror. Anyone who's good sides it out, and like by not maining it, that means that, like, we're already prepared in game 1. And like in Night Assailant, like isn't particularly like great in the mirror too. Like yeah, it makes your discard traps like a little better. But, like, you're not always just going to have, like, a flip effect in the grave with the Night Assailant in hand and a discard trap. Like, that doesn't come up super often. Like, a lot of times you just end up having to set it, and Night Assailant is just really not good there. So, the other big thing with this deck, probably the thing that sticks out to most people, I think, is that we're playing a lot of Dark Mimics. We're playing 2 level 1 and 1 level 3. And this is the kind of card that is deceptively good. Like, you look at it on paper and you're like, oh, that card just does nothing. Like, why would you even play that? And, like, normally you might think, like, oh, Dakochi, probably just better. But Dark Mimics, they do, like, a lot of things that are, like, very important in this particular metagame. So one is that Mystic Tomato is a pretty good card right now, especially in Thunder Dragon Chaos. And the main reason why is because like you want to search Sengen, which searches Sinister Serpent, which is like basically like the best card in your deck. So you already like want to play Mystic Tomatoes anyway, but you want to have more targets than just Sengen, because like you might draw your Sengen first, and then like your Tomato doesn't have anything good to search, and so on. So there's some options there. Like you could play Newdoria, which like we do have in the side, but Newdoria is like another one of those cards where it's just like really mediocre against like a lot of the field. So instead we get to play Dark Mimics, and that does a few things. One, Dark Mimic level 1, obviously it's a level 1, so like it makes our Metamorphosis better. And much in the same way that like in Angel Chaos you play Shining Angel just to search the level 1s so that you have them as a meta target, you can do the same thing with Tomato, right? You can summon Tomato, crash to the monster, get a Mimic level 1, and then meta it, go into 1,000 Eyes, take their guy. So, you know, the Tomato with the Mimic allows us to get away with like 3 meta 2 goats, whereas you really wouldn't be able to otherwise. Second, obviously, why are we playing Mimic level 3? Well, that does 2 things. You know, one, we can search Mimic level 3 with Tomato to say our opponent has like a bunch of monsters, they're attacking our set Tomato, and like our Sengen's already gone. Obviously, we'll go Tomato, search level 3, they'll kill our Mimic level 3, we'll draw a card, and then we haven't like lost any cards, we've stopped 2 attacks, we've drawn a card. However, the other thing that you can do is, you know, if they have one monster, they attack your set Tomato, you search Mimic level 1, in standby phase next turn, you level it up, get level 3, crash it into, you know, attack into their guy, draw 2 cards, and it basically turns your Mystic Tomato into a pot of greed. So, like, obviously that just makes Mystic Tomato really insane. Like, you can either search Sengen, search Sinister, which is going to get you card advantage, or search Mimic level 1, level it up, and then that's going to get you card advantage. And keep in mind, like, that thins out your deck quite a bit, too, right? You know, you Tomato, grab level 1, which grabs level 3, which draws you 2 cards. That's getting you, like, 4 cards deeper into your deck. And Thunder Dragon Chaos is really the kind of deck where you want to be doing that. However, one of the most overlooked things that makes Dark Mimic level 1 so good right now, and I mean like really good, like broken beyond, you know, most people's wildest dreams, is that one of the main cards that people side, and sometimes even main, for Thunder Dragon Chaos is Mind Control. And Mind Control is like almost bad against this deck. Now obviously, like, if they Mind Control your set Tomato, you know, you just like pass it back and then they can't do anything with it. But if they Mind Control your Mimic level 1, you know, they can flip it and draw a card, but then on your turn, like, they have to pass it back and then you can level it up for level 3, which is just really good for you, because, you know, again, you've thinned out your deck of card. If the Mimic level 3 dies, you've drawn 2. Like, their Mind Control was basically, like, a really bad situational Upstart Goblin. So, again, Mimic level 1, it's, like, one of those things where it's, like, on the surface, it doesn't seem that good, but it has just so much utility that, like, in my opinion, there's almost, like, no excuse not to play it, especially, like, in a deck with Metamorphosis. Obviously, you can just naturally draw your Mimic level 1, set it, and meta it, and so on. The other thing notable about this deck is we're playing Phoenix Windblast instead of Raigeki Break, which I think is better overall, but I also think it's better in the current meta. And the reason why is because Raigeki Break is just not a very good card in, like, a lot of Chaos Mirrors. Most of the things, like, they just don't care about if they die, but, if you, like, Wing Blast someone's Thousand Eyes Restrict, for example, it going back into their extra is much better than it going to the graveyard, because now they don't have a dark in their grave. And there are, like, a lot of interactions in certain matchups, like against Reasoning Gate, for example, you can do cool things like if they Reasoning and have a monster on their field, you can Wing Blast their monster to the top and then call, you know, whatever level the monster is. So if they have like an Air Knight and play Activate Reasoning, you Wing Blast their Air Knight to the top and call level 5. And that's just really good. And there's a lot of like tricky plays that you can do with Wing Blast that you can't do with Raigeki Break. And the other problem with like running Raigeki Break, especially in this kind of deck, is that if we had like 3 metas and 2 Raigeki Breaks, that would give our opponent like way too much incentive to set their Sinister Serpent to try to bait like Thousand Eyes or Raigeki Break. So that's another thing where like Wing Blast balances out the deck in a certain way that like Raigeki Break really doesn't. And another thing that this deck is really good at is getting like an early lead in terms of card advantage and sort of like taking the initiative. And in decks like that, you really would just rather sort of Wing Blast and make it harder for your opponent to dig themselves out of the hole by drawing the same cards, rather than like if you Raigeki Break their guy, then next turn they might like top deck Pot of Greed or something like that. You know, it doesn't come up a lot necessarily, but you know, Wing Blast is just the kind of card where there's a lot like fewer things that can go wrong when you activate it. You know, especially because again, your opponent's gonna have a lot of incentive to try to set things like Sangan and Sinister Serpent to bait your Thousand Eyes, and you just don't want a Raigeki Break there. So, you know, otherwise, like, most of the choices are pretty standard. You'll notice that, like, unlike some of these Thunder Dragon Chaos decks, we're playing, like, all the staples. We've got Breaker Snatch, Mirror Force Torrential, and that makes your aggro matchup, like, way better than most Thunder Dragon Chaos decks would normally have, even though, like, we're not main decking Gravekeeper Spy. But, like, your matchup against all of the other Thunder Dragon Chaos decks, like, against sort of the standard lists that people have been playing lately, it's, like, almost impossible to lose, because your deck just has so many more powerful cards in it. Like, Tsukiyomi, sort of chaining the Mimics together, having meta to take whatever their guy is, having Wing Blasters make them draw the same cards over and over again. Like, and again, the fact that we're not playing Card Destruction and Night Assailant really helps us out in the mirror, too. So, like, they just have to get really, really lucky to win. And against, like, decks like Reasoning Gate, for example, that would normally be very, very good against the standard Thunder Dragon Chaos deck, you know, here we have Goats to stop, you know, a Reasoning Gate rush. We have, you know, meta to go into Thousand Eyes and sort of also stop a Reasoning Gate rush. If somehow we can, like, Tribute Summon Thunder Dragon on the second turn, we can meta for Balter and win that way. And you'll also notice, like, we have some very good side deck cards against Reasoning Gate. Kuribo is actually very good against them because it's a meta target, and you can go Tomato into Sangan to search Kuribo to stop, like, way more damage than they possibly think you could. We also cite Vortex for that matchup, and the third Goats, and Magic Jammer. So... and Cyberstein, because you can Stein for Last Warrior. So, like, a lot of the decks that would normally counter a deck like this, like, we actually counter instead. Like, the Reasoning Gate deck, you know, we counter pretty hard. Most of the aggro decks we counter pretty hard, because we've got, like, Tomatoes, Goats, meta, you know, Tsukiyomi to kill Blade Knight, that sort of thing. And then, again, you know, even a lot of the side deck cards that people would side in against us. Like Mind Control, we counter pretty hard. They don't want to Mind Control our Tomato. They don't want to Mind Control our Mimic. We only play 2 Faith for them to Mind Control. So, like, it's just the kind of deck that just doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. And that is, I think, you know, why it was able to go, like, 36-2 in ranked. So, you know, since most people know me for playing Angel Chaos, I think I'll sort of explain some of the advantages that this has, like some of the similarities, but like some of the differences. Because I know like some people who watch my content probably play Angel Chaos, because I always talk about like why it's so good. So you know, I'll explain that. Obviously the similarities, you know, we sort of have that like recruiter toolbox. You know, instead of siding Roulette Barrel for the aggro decks, we side Newdoria. One of the advantages that this has compared to Angel Chaos is I think some people have gotten used to playing against Angel Chaos and sort of like know some of the tricks. Like some people will side deck Azura Priest. Like I have that in our side, you know, as well for the Angel Chaos decks. And Azura Priest like doesn't really wreck this deck quite as hard as it wrecks Angel Chaos. Again, we can kind of deceive people by like making them think that like Mind Control is a way better card than it is, whereas some people just know not to side in Mind Control against Angel Chaos. Our trap lineup has like a bit more utility than Angel Chaos with the Wing Blast. There are just certain tricks that you can do, even things where like if Wing Blast is your only card set and they summon Breaker, like Wing Blasting their Breaker to the top is actually in many cases very good because they just are going to have like a dead Breaker from now on, since you'll only set things if they're chainable, which is like most of our back rows anyway. Disadvantages, I mean, I will say like this deck is very consistent. It's very low variance. It has very good openings. Not nearly as much as Angel Chaos. Like obviously we can open multiple Thunder Dragons. Opening Mimic level 3 is fine, but it's like definitely not ideal. And, you know, we don't always want to open Tsukiyomi. Sometimes we can have, like, dead metas, since we don't have nearly as many meta targets as Angel Chaos does. Even sometimes Wing Blast, like, isn't a card that you really want to open with, like, depending on the rest of your hands. It kind of depends. On the other hand, like, even though the openings are a little weaker, like, the ceilings are a little higher, like, you can definitely close out games faster. Like, you know, some things that people complain about with Angel Chaos is like, oh, I don't have anything to tribute my Thousand Eyes Restrict for. Obviously here you can tribute for Thunder Dragon if you want to, which can sort of get you out of a pickle sometimes. I know, like, you know, in the last GOAT Format Championship, Frog Icon, like, I mean, a lot of this was his own fault, admittedly, but he did lose in Losers Finals because he couldn't out his own Thousand Eyes. So, in many ways, you know, even though with Angel Chaos, like, I think people complain a little too much about, like, the Thousand Eyes problem. It is a problem, and it does make the deck a little trickier to play. Whereas this deck, I think, is, like, a lot more straightforward. Like, if you're a newer player to the format, I think, like, you'll find this deck easier to play than Angel Chaos. So, like, the learning curve's better. Like, it definitely has, like, a few tricks that you need to know. Like how to use your tomatoes, how to use your mimics, how to use your Phoenix Wind Blast, but like otherwise, like it's pretty straightforward. So yeah, so that wraps up the deck. You know, again, give this a try. I know for a long time people sort of didn't really take my word for it on how Angel Chaos, how good that deck was, but I think this deck in many ways like sort of takes like the best things about Angel Chaos and Thunder Dragon Chaos and like combines them into one and like gets rid of some of their weaknesses. So yeah, give this deck a shot. It's really sick. Sideboard is a little like untuned. You know, I like most of the cards, but you could maybe change a few things. But deck has an amazing track record. Haven't gotten anyone to enter a tournament yet with it, I think. But you know, if someone good does, I imagine they will probably do well. So yeah, take care. Let me guys know what you think of the deck in the comments. Hey guys, I'm back. Decided to throw a little bonus footage in here before I let you guys go. This is the deck in action. Here in this match, this is actually piloted by the Mensch, who is you know, a pretty decent Angel Chaos player, so I convinced him to give this deck a try instead. His opponent is playing aggro, which he's playing a Chaos aggro deck, which the Mensch actually got first place with. So he's well familiar with the matchup. And you know, for the most part, this is just kind of a standard example of how Thunder Dragon Chaos with metas tends to beat aggro. You just make a bunch of Thousand Eyes Restricts and Chaos Monsters, try to kill other guys. You will get to see some Mimic tricks in this game. Not right now, although, you know, obviously the opponent's under a lot of pressure to kill this Mimic, because if he doesn't, you just get the level 3. But here, we'll see we've got that tomato trick that I told you about. He gets the Mimic level 3, gets Mirror Forced, and now, like, you know, here the opponent has the Torrential to clear the board, but obviously if he didn't, the Mimic level 3 would be a really sick wall. And, you know, at this point, all the opponent's cards are gone. You know, game's basically over. You'll notice that the opponent has no Darks Engrave right now. So, rather than attack this Donzalug, he decides to banish it, so that way, if the opponent top decks a Chaos Monster, it'll be dead. Decides to banish again, because Breaker's also dark. So yeah, so he attacks for 4,200 there. And game's over. And then you'll see, post side, he brings in the Spy. Spy's a very good side in a lot of Chaos decks, like if you're not maining it. You know, here he goes for the Sinister, since we've got some good discard effects for it. Discards the Faith so that the Sorcerer will be live later, just in case. And, you know, at this point, game's basically over. Statch gets a 2-for-1. We've got Spy to block the field. He's got Goats to block the Donzalug. And this is the kind of game state where Phoenix Windblast is really good, because you just want your opponent to keep drawing the same cards over and over again. Unfortunately, here he gets MST'd. But, you know, clearly he's still very ahead. You know, hasn't drawn Thunder Dragon, but, you know, he had the Faith Engraved for the Light. So, yeah, so pretty quick 2-0, and that's, like, pretty representative of how a lot of these games go. Like, you just get so much card advantage, and they just can't do anything. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys.